Welcome to Chats at Arcadia. I'm Dan, and I'm joined here with Mike.
Hello.
And each week we explore topics that have recently captured our attention and will hopefully capture yours too. Let's dive in.
Oh, hey Dan.
Mike, this is our first episode of the podcast. So,
Ever?
ever, yeah. And I guess we should probably introduce ourselves to the audience. Who are you, Mike?
Yeah. I'm Mike. I live here at Arcadia. I'm a lawyer, and I have a lot of ideas that I'd like to talk about with Dan. And we thought, oh, we could record a podcast and invite all of you lovely people to join us in these conversations.
Yeah, that is our origin story.
It is the whole origin story.
Indeed. Uh,
Who are you, Dan?
what's your background, Michael?
What do you mean by background? I was born at a very young age. I've sort of messed around a lot, played around a lot. I ended up studying law and psychology. Then I worked as a lawyer bringing claims in the Waitangi Tribunal, and now I work in civil litigation, helping people or sort out issues and conflicts around large sums of money. How about you, Dan?
Well, I'm an AI and data consultant. I can't really. I don't think I'm allowed to say what I actually do. I don't know. There's the mystery behind consultancy. They try to obscure a lot of things. I guess I can tell you before getting into consultancy, I studied engineering at university. So that involved a lot of maths, physics, computer science, data science, optimization, and heuristics. Like,
I don't know what any of those words are,
well,
but okay.
long story short, I'm a lot of fun at parties.
Yeah, no, I see, One of our great conversations was around batteries, and then you told me at the end, not a week goes by when I don't talk to somebody about batteries.
It
It
just
was a
happened.
pretty fun conversation, though. So
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
there is a market for it. The market is me.
Mm. And hopefully our audience.
Yeah, and hopefully you too. Do you guys like batteries?
Let us know.
Dan knows a lot about batteries.
So, I found that in in the modern day, when we introduce ourselves, it's become quite commonplace to talk about like our personalities. And of course, when you talk about personalities, inevitably the topic of MBTI comes up. What is your MBTI?
Well, I don't think I fit that well into any of the categories, but I think the closest one was INFP. I'm not sure. I don't think I remember what that means. They're not very memorable, are they?
No, I mean the only one that I can remember confidently is the first one, whether introvert or extrovert. I feel like everyone kind of knows that one.
Yes. Oh, I think I remember potentially remember what each of them are. So I think N or S is intuitive or sensory, and the third one is F or T, thinking or feeling, and the last one is perceiving or judging. Now, I can't tell you what those words mean in this context, but I think that's what they all stand for. So you can have any combination of those four. So,
Okay.
if four letters, each of them have two options.
I don't remember what I was for the second and fourth one, but I distinctly remember my results said like 99% introverted and something like 90% thinking and not feeling.
Right.
I don't know what that tells you about me. And I'd say for me, that's kind of like the first criticism that I have of these personality tests is that they don't really tell you that much about a person other than very, very broad strokes that you can kind of pick up from talking with someone for 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Sometimes you're like, why don't I understand that person? And so I'm quite strong on the intuitive. Now, I don't quite understand what that means, but I think it's not necessarily like creativity, or it's I think some people are I think it's a bit more lost professor type mindset, and some people are sort of your head in the clouds a little bit, whereas sensory is a bit more on the ground, aware of what's going on. So I'm a bit head in the clouds. I like thinking about abstract things and talking about abstract things, and sometimes I find that conversations with people it just doesn't quite fly. And I think I've been thinking recently, perhaps that's because, well, those people are the more sensory people that they connect with people around where you are and what you're doing. Not like, hey, I had this cool idea. Do you think that's a cool idea too?
Interesting. So what is that? Is it just a personality thing, or like what is it that makes it so that people can't connect with that level?
I think it's just people. Well, I think it is personality. It's just those things. It could also just be interest. Like I'm interested in some things and want to talk about them, and other people just aren't. It doesn't mean that some people are smarter or dumber. It's just some smart people like nerdy things. Some smart people like normal things. It could just be that.
Interesting. It sounds like you're kind of blurring personality with interest there, because um,
Well, not really. I'm just using it as an explanation or like an example maybe. If you or because this isn't so much a personality as a description of a personality. And if you're thinking of someone who's very grounded, very aware of what's going on, it's just one of the categories that whoever made the MBTI decided to make.
hmm. And like, so there are a lot of different personalities out there. I remember I've talked
I
to
heard there were only 16.
16. Oh yeah. Well, if you follow Myers-Briggs, supposedly. But yeah, I've talked to people like they said, "Oh, my company paid for us like to do this exam. We went to some sort of center, and they had us do all these questions and do these activities. And through that, I found out I'm a blue personality, and my coworkers are mostly green. I don't know what any of that means." And
Yeah.
I think it falls into kind of the same issues I have with MBTI. There's just too much like the personality tests in themselves don't really tell you anything really.
Hmm.
I find that if someone tells me they are an INFJ or whatever those letters are, it's about as useful as someone coming up to me and saying, "Hi, I'm a Capricorn." You know?
Right, I see. I think perhaps it's just someone designed a way to measure something, and then they went and measured it, and then they tell you what it is. It's a bit, um, like someone made a measurement for how introverted someone is or how extra. Oh, it's actually the other way around. So people don't measure introversion; they measure extroversion. And they decided, okay, well, we'll ask these questions, and if people have these answers, then they're high extroversion, and then we can put that on their personality score. But I don't think you need to do a test to understand that you. And also, it's not that meaningful. I think if someone, it's not useful to know that someone's very extroverted if you can um, see them jumping up and down at a party. You kind of get the same information.
Yeah, so I don't really understand the point of these personality tests. Like, what is their purpose of existing? I don't find them to be very helpful, but there seems to be an entire industry built around
Well, you
this.
mentioned your friends went to, or their company paid for them to go and do some tests. Do you think there's some value for their company somehow?
Well, there's definitely a perceived value. Whether there actually is a tangible value is something that I would dispute, right? So this company has somehow been, in my opinion, duped into spending hundreds of dollars per employee, right? Because these aren't cheap,
Yeah.
right? To set these, yes, not only sit these exams, but they're taking time off of work to do so. It seems rather nefarious to me. To me, the whole thing seems like a scheme built up by a bunch of people, psychology majors, trying to cash out on their degree. To be honest,
Well, I think it began. I'm not exactly sure about MBTI, but personality is something that you study in psychology. And one of the ways that they understand personality is what they call trait theory, which is essentially there are people have personality traits that are measurable, and you can go measure them. And if you can measure them, then you can have statistics and you can do data stuff with it. I don't know what they do with it. I mean, I think they find like cool correlations and something and things like that. And MBTI is a trait theory. Is people have personality traits, and so introversion, extroversion, perceiving, judging, and the rest of it. But as far as I'm aware, it's not one that's actually used by academics. So in academics, if you're going to use a trait theory, they use what they call the Big Five. I'm not sure if I can remember them, but I think the acronym spells ocean. So it's like openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And I think those are what they use for reliable measures of personality traits. But you're right. I'm not sure if you can just measure things and explore them for academic purposes. I'm not sure if that's really valuable in a business, or how does that translate to value?
I think the arguments I've heard in favor of these personality tests is often that it helps you understand your coworkers, like know how to deal with them. You know, if someone doesn't want to go out for drinks after work, it could just be the introversion speaking or something like that. So there's like an element of um, learning more about each other, which I guess is kind of the premise behind these personality tests. So that's the way that they market it, the way that they try to sell it. My issue is that it doesn't really accomplish what it sets out to achieve.
Right, why not?
Well, I've never heard anyone come out of these tests and actually tell me how, explain to me in tangible terms how it's changed the way that they interact with their employees. And I would say it's actually that time and money would have been better spent on some sort of like leadership development course where you're actually taught, yeah, how to deal with different individuals and behaviors, right?
Yeah, okay.
That seems like a more direct way to solve that problem rather than to, again, do these personality tests that gets you at the starting line, maybe, but again, it doesn't really get you very far.
Can I tell you another place where I think this is overused?
Go ahead.
All right, I think this is very overused in dating.
In dating, I don't have a lot of experience of using MBTI in my dating life. Why don't you enlighten me, Michael?
Well, it's about are our personalities compatible?
Compatible.
Yeah, so apparently like different combinations of MBTI scores have better chances of working out. I'm not sure how they figured that out. Um, but I'm not sure how significant that is. If you want to know the personality of the person that you're dating, I think you'd spend time with them and see if you get on. I'm not sure if doing a test is very conducive to the success of that relationship.
Yeah, so as soon as you said that certain personalities gel well with others, in my mind, what I'm hearing is Capricorns are incompatible with Libras.
Yeah, it does seem to be about that scientific. And, you know, if you have a 50-year long marriage with someone, I'm not sure if the compatibility of your personality on MBTI had much to do with it, or if it's just how well you're able to work with someone that you are different to. Or if that's a skill you develop over time rather than inbuilt personality trait.
Hmm. I think this is starting to veer into a completely different territory. I wasn't expecting it to go down that road.
Well, what do you think a personality is?
What is a personality?
Okay, that's a pretty abstract question.
Is there a certain line of questioning you had in mind, or is it just the open?
Well, I think people think a personality is something that's stable across time, and sort of like it's sort of inbuilt, perhaps a complex interaction of nature and nurture.
So, are you suggesting that it doesn't change over time, or doesn't easily change over
Well, I
time?
think that's the theory, but I'm not convinced that 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 your personality is that stuck in a meaningful way. I'm not sure if people are always I don't know if people might become more extroverted as they get older or something, but definitely there are times when I feel I've gone through phases of being more extroverted, and I'm not sure how that fits with, or that would probably be a big law in how you'd measure the data if you're doing a personality test.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. My level of introversion and extroversion actually kind of does the opposite of whoever I am around. So if I'm surrounded by a bunch of extroverts, I'll become more introverted. If I'm surrounded by a bunch of introverts, I'll actually become more extroverted. Now, there's nothing about the MBTI test to ask that kind of question. It doesn't take that into account. So I would say absolutely it complicates matters.
Yeah, I mean, there's a way that we people try and is your personality so stable and inbuilt that it can't be rewired? I'm not sure, but I know that's something that people have tried to do to try and rewire what's going on deep inside them is using psychedelics like I can't say that word psilocybin.
I
Psilocybin.
I have no idea
You know
what
that
that
word?
is.
Okay, it's the active component of magic mushrooms,
Oh, okay.
and this has been something I've just seen quite a lot of recently. Have you seen much of people talking about this? Or?
I can't say I'm very familiar with the topic.
Okay, well, I think it's quite interesting because it's a drug, but it's not really like other drugs, where it's not like people have some enormous sense of euphoria. It's people have claim to have really meaningful experiences. So it just reshapes the way that they view the world, and it's not just a high. It might have long-lasting consequences about what you think about the world and how you view yourself.
So you're saying that so with most drugs, right?
Mhm.
They will make you experience something, but that is contained to the period in which you are under the influence of that drug.
Yes.
Whereas the I don't know what the term is. The mushrooms, magic mushrooms, they will actually make you think about something that changes your worldview at
Mhm.
its core and has effects beyond the time that you are under the effect.
Yes, I mean, think about what was the most meaningful experience in your life? Well, might have been a bit of a heavy question for the first episode.
The most meaningful experience of my life. I'd say,
He's making a lot of hand gestures.
I just, I don't, I can't think of anything that comes to mind off the top of my
Right.
head.
Well, a lot of people say, like the birth of my first child, that was like the day I became a father was the day that my world changed forever. But people say the same thing about using psychedelics. They're saying like there's somehow this rewires like, the way that they see themselves. I don't know if it has personality changes.
Do you have any details as to what it can be that is such an eye-opening experience? Is it that they're hallucinating about something? Is it that they see something in themselves that they didn't recognize before?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to someone who said it was he, this big felt this big sense of connection between him and other people in the world, and that had always been the case. It was always the case that everything was so connected. I I'm not sure if I don't think it's a hallucination. It's just a different way of seeing the world that came out as the result of the experience of using this drug.
And people don't have that kind of experiences with other highs. Like, isn't that kind of the stereotypical portrayal of people who get high on marijuana? It's that they suddenly become these philosophical thinkers, but they're saying very random things.
Yes, but I think it's a, a change in belief rather than just a change in experience.
Hmm.
People, I mean, imagine that, right? You process that, you have a pill, right? And you have all right, and you have a bunch of these pills, and if you take that pill, you will have a meaningful experience.
Is that a guarantee?
I mean, potentially. That could be the future of this.
And is that something that happens every time you take this drug, or is it that do you need certain conditions? Like, do you need to be listening to classical music, and you need to be in a dark room, or is it just you just take this pill and you're going to the way you see the world is just going to change?
Okay, I don't think they actually have pills, but potentially they could have the future. Yeah, I don't know the conditions. And advocates for legalizing this kind of drug say things like, that's not, I would be robbing my children of, I don't want the government to rob my children of having this experience. It's a pretty strong language for something that's, a drug.
That's interesting because, like, yeah, I can't imagine an advocate of something else of a like. I can't see someone saying, "I can't imagine a world where my children couldn't possibly have coffee or wine or um."
Yeah, even if they're a really big coffee drinker or wine enthusiast, no one's like, I don't want to live in a world where future generations can't drink coffee.
There must be something to it.
Yeah, and the other place that it's used is highly treatment resistant opioid addiction. So when all else fails, I don't think I use a psilocybin, but there's some other hallucinogen that they use. And when all other therapies have failed, this can help, this can fix opioid addiction. And I don't know how that works, but that's, I find that a very fascinating idea.
Yeah, all this talk about like rewiring your brain and like changing the way that you see the world. It's in my mind, it's starting to paint an interesting picture of like, can you start brainwashing people under the influence of this drug? And I don't know, you'll sit them down in a room, get them to ingest a drug, and like have a bunch of like let's say propaganda of some sort to get them to believe in a very specific worldview. Do you think that would be a possibility?
I mean, it's a very scary possibility. And if it is, there's potentially, I don't think the technology for that exists yet.
Well, that's not really about technology; it's more methodology, right? Could
Okay.
you influence someone to think a certain way as a result of this drug? Yeah, so enabled by this drug.
Yeah, I don't know if we can control how what someone else's experience is. I think, I think it's a very interesting topic, but at the same time, it makes me very uncomfortable. There's something just a bit weird and gross about it.
Is it about the ethics about it, or
I don't know, I like to think that who I am deep inside is something that's more solid than something that a chemical can alter. Anyways, in terms of drugs, I will stick to a purely recreational drug. No, I'm kidding. I don't. No, I
it looks like a good old caffeine and
caffeine and alcohol though.
and alcohol? I guess by elimination, I guess. I'm not very familiar with other types of drugs.
I mean, okay. If if it's not for drugs and alcohol, Daniel, what is it that you do to relax?
Well, drugs and alcohol. I wouldn't say that they're the first thing that come to mind when I it comes to leisure time.
Okay, it's not drugs and alcohol for you then.
But I guess I spend a lot of time just and like there's a part of me that always says that I want to do something productive,
Yeah.
and then that part of me gets curbed by the part of me that just wants to sit at home and watch YouTube videos all day.
Have there been any hobbies that you've tried and just haven't been able to get into?
Hobbies that I've tried but not been able to get into. So ever since I was younger, I was very infatuated with the Super Smash Brothers series of video games.
Oh yes.
So the premise of that video game is that you have a bunch of characters from various different video game franchises, and they're in this one game battling it out against each other. So that really appealed to me. But I never owned any of the games, so I just watch like people on YouTube play the game. I just live vicariously through the screen.
Right.
Now, a couple of years ago, or so relatively recently, I had a flatmate who really enjoyed those games, so he tried to get me into it. It's It was a lot more difficult than I had anticipated, and it requires a lot of time and dedication to actually get into learning the mechanics of the game. So that kind of turned me off on really fully investing myself into it.
Video games are hard.
They are shockingly hard. It's supposed to be a thing that you do for fun and like turn your brain off, but you have to like really think about what you're doing. It's crazy.
Yeah, I definitely used to enjoy computer games a lot more as a kid, but now play them for nostalgia reasons, but I'm not very excited about the next big video game that's going to come out. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I have a very steady hobby. I had a friend that brought me along to a ballroom dancing class because she was like, "This is my thing now," and I said, "Okay," and we went along, and it was an interesting experience. Firstly, they had a dance teacher, and he was incredibly good. He is like put on the earth by God to teach people to dance. That he lived it, he breathed it. He's been doing it for 30 years, and it brought him an enormous amount of joy. Unfortunately, I don't think he was really able to teach me to dance. I seem to have multiple left feet and a lack of the sense of rhythm. But it was a fairly enjoyable experience anyway. But somehow, I just don't really feel the need to return.
So, would you say before and after, do you think that you've had a modicum of improvement in your dancing abilities since then?
I mean, perhaps. I mean, I only went a couple of times, and I see how people enjoy it. This kind of goes back to what we were saying about people having different interests, and I'm not exactly sure why. Like, I feel I understand how someone would really enjoy dancing. It's just I don't think I get as much pleasure from this as some other people.
Yeah, I get that. That reminds me when I was younger, I went to this little church event. It happened, I think, every Tuesday evening, where they played. I think it's called lawn balls. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So so the goal of the game is to you bowl this little weighted ball so that it's not going to roll straight. It's going to curve as it rolls because one side's heavier than the other, right? And the goal being to get it as close as you can to this little white ball at the other end
Mm.
of the lawn. And I despise this game with a passion. Like, let me tell you, like, you throw it too hard, it just goes absolutely flying. You throw it too soft, it goes nowhere near the white ball. You can't find that little Goldilocks zone. It's impossible. And the thing is, I was playing with all these older gentlemen who have been playing basically their entire lives. There was actually this one gentleman who was actually legally blind, and he had to feel the weight of the ball in his hands to figure out which side is the heavy side and the light side. But from years of experience alone, he could just bowl perfectly every time and get it right next to that little white ball. And the competitive side of me was just infuriated about losing to a person who was legally blind.
Fascinating. I perhaps some because the stereotype of that game is that it's all played by old people, and perhaps you reach a point in life where you think, you know what, I want to spend my weekend playing lawn bowls. Maybe that's something. Maybe that is something that just changes over time. You go from playing video games to playing lawn bowls. It's the journey of a person in the modern world.
I guess so. Well, that's all the time that we have today. Thank you for listening to Chats at Arcadia. If you enjoyed the episode, hit subscribe and leave a comment for any topics you want us to cover in the future. Until next time, see you later.
Bye.